They poisoned my lake just to stop me from fishing. Yeah, you heard that right. Poisoned it on purpose. The morning I found out, I'd gone down to my usual spot expecting nothing more exciting than a lazy sunrise, some quiet, a couple bass if I was lucky. Instead, I found the pond thick with the sharp chemical stench of dead fish floating everywhere, blue streaks swirling through the water like someone dumped paint in a washing machine, the air burning my nose. For a second, I just stood there, 40 years old, thought I'd seen every dirty trick in the book. But this was next level. Name's Logan Reed. I am a fishing guide, freshwater conservation specialist guy who actually reads his HOA handbook when he moves in, you know what I mean? Every morning for the last 3 years, I'd walk down to that pond, tackle box in hand, watching the sunrise ripple across the water. Never got a single complaint from the HOA, not one. Why would they? I followed every rule, caught and released, picked up more trash than I ever left, probably did more for that pond than half the folks who lived around it. But standing there looking at the devastation, it was obvious this wasn't some natural die-off. This was systematic. Someone had poisoned the water, and the concentration was thickest right there on the eastern shore, where the ground looked freshly disturbed. And you want to talk about cold, deliberate planning. My father always said, a healthy pond is a living thing. If the fish are dying, something's real wrong. I could hear his voice as I watched another bass drift past, silver scales catching the morning light like a warning. That wasn't heat stroke or algae bloom. No way. Somebody had hit this pond with industrial-grade chemicals, and they wanted everyone to see the mess. Then right as I'm processing this horror show, I spot something taped to my front door. An HOA violation notice, official letterhead, $150 fine for environmental damage to shared property. I read it twice thinking I'd lost my mind. How does fishing cause dead fish? I'm the guy who throws back the ones undersized, right? Picks up old beer cans. The kicker. The violation notice was dated a day before the fish kill. Unless Gloria Whitmore, our sharp-suited, always smiling HOA president, was psychic, she knew what was coming. And that's when I realized this wasn't just bad luck. This was harassment with a plan. I barely had time to process that before I heard heels clicking on the pavement. Gloria herself, perfectly dressed, real estate smile, locked and loaded, came striding up, portfolio in hand, like she was serving papers in a courtroom. Maybe if you didn't spend all day fishing, our water wouldn't look like a disaster zone, she said, fake concern dripping off every word. I told her I'd been doing conservation work for 15 years, that I practiced catch and release, but she just shrugged. All I know is we never had problems until you started treating our pond like your personal fishing hole. Never mind the facts. To her, my expertise meant nothing. Then she let something slip, said the pond wouldn't be our concern much longer because big changes are coming. The way she said it, with a little emphasis on improve our home values, sent the hair up on my neck. I started noticing the details, the fresh pipes running under the ground, the new soil near the shore. Someone had been prepping the place, and it wasn't for a fish fry. A couple days later, Gloria called an emergency HOA meeting, another violation of our bylaws, since that takes 7 days' notice. But rules only matter if you care about them. I showed up anyway, feeling the tension in the air, 30 residents whispering and staring at me like I was a criminal. Gloria's assistant, a nervous woman normally avoided eye contact, blocked my way to the front. Given the ongoing investigation, you need to sit in the back, she said, voice shaking but determined. I argued, tried to stand my ground, but it was clear they wanted to make me look guilty before the meeting even started. Gloria took the podium, dressed for Battle Pearl's navy blue power suit, the whole 9 yards. Her voice had this new edge to it. We're here because one resident has repeatedly violated our property usage guidelines, creating a health hazard for the entire community. She never said my name, but every eye turned my way. Then she claimed she had information that this resident me might have sabotaged the water quality to avoid blame for fishing. Imagine that, accused of poisoning the pond myself in front of all my neighbors. The room went dead silent when she pulled out a document, asked me to sign a pledge in public never to fish there again. But in the fine print I saw it references to upcoming development opportunities and necessary environmental impact documentation. She wanted me to sign away my right to object to whatever they had planned. I stood up and called her out, told her you can't ban fishing without a resident vote and environmental study. But she just smiled cold as ice and said, "I'm the president, Mr. Reed. I decide what's best for our property values." When chaos broke out, she whispered to her assistant, not realizing I could hear, "Make sure the development paperwork's ready by Friday. We need contamination documentation for the city permits." That's when it clicked. This was never about fishing. It was about making the pond look toxic so a developer could build and she'd get a payday. My neighbor Paul, who'd resigned from the HOA months earlier over Gloria's leadership, stood up and demanded independent testing. The look Gloria shot him could have curdled milk. After the meeting, Paul pulled me aside. "Logan, meet me at City Hall tomorrow. There's something about our water system you need to see." At City Hall, Paul showed me the water maps. Every house, including Gloria's, got its drinking water from that pond. If someone contaminated the pond, he said grimly, they'd be poisoning their own family. Suddenly, it wasn't just about fish or fines. It was about public health, and the stakes were life or death. That night, I snuck into the HOA office, don't judge desperate times, and found all the evidence permits for a luxury lakeside resort, emails about manufacturing contamination, evidence, phone records with water treatment companies. Gloria had been planning this for months, shopping for someone willing to poison the pond and make it look like my fault. I barely escaped security, but not before snapping photos of everything. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy showed up at my door. Gloria had filed a harassment suit and was seeking a restraining order. She claimed I was stalking her, conducting illegal surveillance. The legal pressure started, and my neighbors began to treat me like a pariah. Mrs. Chen wouldn't make eye contact kids' parents crossing the street when they saw me coming. Worse, my own faucet started smelling off, tasting metallic. The contamination was in the drinking water, just like Paul had warned. Paul wasn't spared either. People accused him of being in on it, of taking bribes. That's how it works, right? Guilt by association. I overheard neighbors talking about infrastructure upgrades, not realizing Gloria had spun the contamination as progress. I tried to catch whoever was still poisoning the pond but failed. My phone died. I tripped. The whole thing was a mess. The next morning, Paul came by looking rough eyes, darting hands, shaking. He dug up more emails. Gloria had taken $50,000 in advance from the developer to provide evidence that the pond was toxic, fast-tracked for permits. Not just fraud, this was federal crime territory now. The developer even outlined which chemicals to use to make it visually dramatic. Fish kills blue water, the whole show. That's when Gloria called me threatening cold, offering one last chance to sign her agreement. I refused, and she escalated, making it clear she could ruin my reputation, my property, even my legal standing. But the truth was out. Paul and I made copies of everything, gave it to the neighbors, including Mrs. Chen and the worried parents. The pressure mounted. Gloria started hiring private contractors to take independent water samples, but the damage was done. Too many people had seen the proof. I called my friend Jake, a water safety expert, and we organized a public water testing event, a picnic by the pond, all transparent, everything recorded. Gloria tried to sabotage us, brought in her own consultants, accused me of trespassing, tried to delay our testing. But when Jake's results came in, it was a bombshell. Copper sulfate levels 15 times above EPA standards, lead and mercury, toxic metals everywhere. This wasn't some accident. This was professional industrial poisoning. Parents panicked. Kids had been getting sick for weeks. Headaches, stomach problems. Gloria's consultant tried to spin it. Blame me, blame fishing, blame the weather. But the chemical signature didn't lie. This was no accident. Paul stepped forward, waving the emails for everyone to see. Our chairwoman took $50,000 to prove our water was poisoned. A neighbor who worked as a paralegal confirmed the email headers were authentic. There was no escape. Gloria tried one last denial, but her own consultant bailed and the crowd turned on her. Residents signed petitions called the EPA, and law enforcement federal agents rolled up within the hour. Gloria went pale when Agent Martinez told her she was facing criminal charges and a federal investigation. Then, in a twist nobody saw coming, Gloria tried to prove the water was safe by drinking from the ornamental fountain in front of everyone. Within minutes, she was clutching her stomach, face turning colors, paramedics rushing in as Karma delivered the final punchline. With Gloria out, the residents voted Paul in as interim president, wrote new bylaws to protect the water, set up regular monitoring, and ban development around the pond for good. The story made the news. Corruption, environmental crime, and poetic justice all rolled into one. Gloria pleaded guilty, paid every cent back, and was banned from ever running an HOA again. You want to know the real punchline? The pond recovered. The community came together stronger than before, and I'm back to fishing, watching the sunrise ripple across water that finally feels like home again. They tried to poison the lake, but the truth floats to the surface every single time. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Ever had your trust poisoned by someone in power? Drop your thoughts down below. I want to hear your story. And if you stuck around till now, hit that like, share your take, and keep standing up for what's right. The next story's got even more twists, so stay tuned and remember, justice has a way of biting back.